Thank you so much for being here this morning. That was a beautiful arrangement of Open My Eyes That I May See. And I remembered that was a hymn in our book. And so I pulled up the lyrics because not only is the music beautiful, the words, open my eyes that I may see glimpses of truth thou hast for me. Placed in my hands the wonderful key that shall unclasp and set me free. Silently now as I wait for thee, ready my God, thy will to see. Open my eyes, illumine me. Spirit divine. It's a beautiful song by Clara Scott, and I love that arrangement. It's a very beautiful arrangement. So, music and ministry, they certainly do have a dance, don't they? I chose the hymn today that we sang for this very same reason. And we're talking about diving into a new experience. Today is, I guess, my first, quote, official Sunday as the leader of this community. I'm humbled and blessed, realizing that there are challenges ahead, but I know that those challenges are not met alone. They are met with each one of the dear souls that show up every week and the dear spirit that flows within each one of us to guide our decisions and make our way. And I wanted to point something out to you. I picked this picture today because in 1995, I was given the opportunity to go perform in Spain. And of course, you know, I had to check my schedule when she called and said, would you like to go play a month in Spain? It took me about 1.3 seconds to say yes. And I was blessed enough to go play at a place called Club La Manga in a place called Cartagena, Spain. And it's on the Mediterranean coast. And my job 6 nights a week was to play in the nightclub from normally around 8 to 12 or thereabouts. I think that were the hours that we kept. And but other than that, I had all day free in a Spanish resort for a good 30 days. It was fantastic. It was really, really fantastic. One of the things that I liked to do during my day was I like to go down to this beach. This beautiful beach, and you can't see it here in this picture, but over to the where that rock is, there was a little cove that was cut out, and I used to get away from the main beach here, and I would go into that cove, and it was sort of rocky, and it was very hard for them to put any beach chairs around, but you could bring your own chair over there and sit, and it was really great because if you've ever had one of those meditation CDs or of waves crashing, well, this was just like that, except it was the real thing. The waves were crashing onto the rocks, and I would sit there in that cove. It was so beautiful and inspiring to me. I actually wrote a song and named it La Cala, which means the cove in Spanish. And it was just a place of very serene, natural meditation. It was just gorgeous, and I would go there almost on a daily basis and take in the scene and take in the experience. Well, one day I was there at La Cala, and I looked out and I saw there were people on top of this rock that you see out there in the middle of the picture. And they were up there on the rock, and there was probably about 4 or 5 of them, and one by one, they took the leap off of the rock. And they were, laughing, having a good time, and I was like, oh man, that looks like fun. And it reminded me of this old swimming hole that I used to go to as a child in the backwaters of Florida. If my parents knew, they'd probably kill me. How dangerous it was, in gator-infested waters, and we went swimming anyway. But anyway, it reminded me of that experience because we had this tree we used to jump off of into the backwaters, and I said, that looks like fun. So I think I'm going to swim out there to the rock, and I'm going to take a jump. Well, I swam out to the rock, and I crawled up onto the top of the rock, and by the time I'd gotten to the rock, no one was there. I was the only one on the rock. And so I made my way over to the edge where they were jumping off, and all of a sudden, it wasn't fun anymore. It didn't look like it was going to be fun. Because as I peered over the edge of that rock, I noticed there were some rocks that were jutting out. And one slip and risked serious bodily harm. Serious bodily harm. And I'm thinking, so, what I did was I just played it cool. I stood up there on the rock, and I'm like looking, and this goes on for about 10 minutes. And so I said, I really just wanted to come out here on the rock anyway. So I sat down and I laid down on the rock like I was sunbathing. But people on the shore, they're sitting there watching me, and they knew good and well that I was scared out of my mind. I was really petrified. And so they stood there on the beach. A couple of people stood there on the beach and started yelling at me, jump, jump, jump. And I'm like, I just think, no, they're not talking to me. No, they're not. No. But so finally, there's probably about, I'd say close to 10 people on the beach screaming at me to jump. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, do I be a coward, and do I turn around and I crawl back off the rock and show that I don't have the bravery? That would have been the wise thing to do, to be honest with you, being that I was 1995, and well, my youngest daughter at the time, or my daughter at the time, was just not even 10 years old, and my other two hadn't come along yet. So there was a lot to happen yet in my life, but so. Finally, I said, well, I looked and I said, there's people that went before me that were able to jump off this rock, and they were able to be successful. So how do I make sure that I'm successful? So I stood back up on the rock, and I realized, okay, in order for me to make this happen, I really have to jump, and I have to jump with all my might. I really have to go really into this experience. Otherwise, if I'm timid, I'm going to fall short, and I'm going to really injure myself, if not kill myself. So I stood up there on the rock, and I focused, and without thinking too much more, I just lunged with all my might into the waters below. And as you witness, I survived. I'm here 20 plus years ago, later, to tell you about this experience. I survived by diving in, by giving it my all. It was scary. And by the time I got back to shore, I was so exhausted. I must have went back to the room and slept for about 3 hours, because my adrenaline was just, it had drained me that much. But it served as a metaphor for me, as a life lesson, that, you don't know always what's going to happen, but you have to give it your all. You have to give it your all. There was another story I wanted to share with you, if you could roll we remember college basketball coach Rick Pitino. Now, I know Kansas is a big basketball state. I'm sure maybe you guys have heard of the University of Kansas, right? You've heard of the Jayhawks? I'm sure you have. Well, there's a couple of states in the country that really sort of define college basketball, Kansas being one of them. They have a rabid fan base. And when Kansas State is doing well, it's really an incredible experience to see those teams go at it. But you also have North Carolina, you have Indiana, and you have Kentucky. Kentucky is certainly a hotbed of college basketball. And Rick Pitino, in 1989, was a up-and-coming hot commodity in the coaching world. He had just completed a stint with the New York Knicks after he had been successful at Providence College, and he had been hired by the New York Knicks, and he coached in the pros for a couple of years. And so the University of Kentucky knew that they were in trouble because they had some sanctions coming their way. And so they reached out to Rick Pitino and they hired him. Rick Pitino decided to go into this coaching experience with knowing that his team was going to face sanctions. They weren't going to be able to be shown on national television. They weren't going to be able to compete in postseason play. They weren't going to be able to do a lot of things. The opportunity for him to recruit good talent was almost impossible from that vantage point. But what he was blessed with were 4 guys that decided to stay. Everyone else sort of abandoned the program. And there were 4 guys that were recruited to the school from a prior coach. And instead of giving up on the program, they decided to jump in full force and give everything they had to the program. These 4, Richie Farmer, John Pelfrey, Sean Woods, and Darren Feldhaus. Had it not been for the most incredible shot in college basketball history, you've probably seen it anytime you've watched a college basketball game, where Christian Laettner from Duke makes this incredible shot. He actually made it against these 4. But probably within a week after that game, maybe 2 weeks, but it was very shortly after that game, that the university recognized these 4 players as being those who did not give up on the program. They were committed to jumping into this experience, not knowing what was going to happen. They knew that their teams were going to struggle the first couple of years. But they said, you know, we're going to jump in anyway. We're going to give this program everything we have and see where it takes us. What happened was the university recognized their selflessness, and each one of these players had their jersey retired. What's significant about that is none of these players were even considered for the pros. Their last games of competitive basketball were that night against Duke. They dove into a bad situation, to a very challenging situation, and gave their all, risking their future on a program that was not guaranteed to give them anything. Sometimes we can only see the next step. And as I thought of this commitment of myself jumping off the rock, and also the commitment of these players to just take that next step, sometimes it's all we can do. We can't always see the full end of the story. We as humans, we want to try to see that. We want to try to embrace, okay, where are we headed? Sometimes the only thing we can do is just take the next step. So as I thought about our founders, if you would have said to Myrtle and Charles in 1886, hey, I got a secret to tell you, Myrtle and Charles. You guys are going to lead a worldwide religious movement, and you're going to be known to millions. And people are going to come, and they're going to study from you, and they're going to learn from you, and then groups, and you're going to change millions upon millions of lives. If you would have said that to Charles and Myrtle in 1886, they would have laughed you out of their house. So what did happen? What happened was Myrtle, as we know, very well documented, was sick. She took the next step of seeking help. She took the next step of going to a program where she heard those fateful words of, "You do not inherit sickness." That was her first step. She had no idea at that time that she was going to be starting a worldwide religious movement. Then, the next step was Charles became intrigued. And he began to study and began to pray himself. He became intrigued. Again, at that point, not knowing that they were going to start a worldwide religious movement. Then they began to share. They began to share a little magazine or whatever you call it. There's actually a copy of it at the church on 9th and Tracy, the very first Modern Thought, which was published in 1889. They began to share their thoughts and their feelings about this. Then they began to pray for others, never knowing that they were going to create a worldwide prayer ministry that's going to pray with 1.5 million people a year. They just took the next step. How many times in your life have you gone and avoided a situation that may have seemed challenging because you were afraid to take that next step? We don't always know the outcome of what's going to happen. But we know by just taking the next step, sometimes incredible things can happen. That's our emphasis today, taking that next step, stepping into the next experience, as small as it may seem. It might be as simple as, I'm going to choose to read the daily word every day. Or it might be as simple as saying, I'm going to choose to volunteer 1 hour a week. I'm going to choose to do something that I've been putting off, that I've maybe not known where it's going to lead me or where it's going to take me, but I'm going to feel that way. Now I want to share this with you personally. That's a lot of how I feel about this experience coming to Unity of Leavenworth. It's one of those just take the next step experiences. When I was asked to serve, I was totally blessed, totally humbled and surprised. I never saw myself leading another church. But I took the next step. So many people around me had said, you need to, that's really a challenging situation. But my job is not to focus on the challenge. My job is to focus on the next step, whatever that is. If it's praying for somebody after service, that's the next step. If it's visiting somebody who's sick, that's the next step. If it's changing something in one person's life, I've changed the world, but I haven't changed it. Spirit working through me has changed it. Just as Spirit working through you changes your world. If we pass on, if we go on to the... Jesus, walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, and they were fishermen. Come follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once they left their nets and they followed him. Going on from there, he saw the other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat, and their father followed him. Jesus never promised them fame. Jesus never said, hey, I'll make sure you get paid, $100 a day. No, they followed him. They followed something that they believed in. They took the next step. They left an area of comfort for an area of discomfort, something that they believed in. And I'm sure maybe their fellow fishermen said, what are those guys doing? Why aren't they here fishing today? They gone off their rocker? There's plenty of fish out here. How are they going to live? What are they going to do? How are they going to make it? We'll go on to the next slide. Charles Fillmore writes in The Revealing Word, an instinctive trust in a power higher than ourselves Because blind faith does not understand the principles of being. It is liable to discouragement and disappointment. An instinctive trust and a power higher than ourselves. An instinctive trust. I trust that this community will unfold perfectly. I don't have to try to force anything. I don't have to try to be something that I'm not. All I have to do is take the next step as guided by Spirit. That is where my instinctive trust in the higher power comes from. Knowing that whatever unfolds is perfect and okay. Whether we have 2 people or 2,000 people, doesn't matter. Taking the next step will get me to the right and perfect place. So we're going to close with this affirmation. I'm diving into the unlimited possibilities without restraint. Knowing as I do, my faith will be quickened and my life will be full. Let's say that together. I'm diving into unlimited possibilities without restraint. Knowing as I do, my faith will be quickened and my life will be full. And let's take that into meditation if we may.